Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
Out of desperation, she took a job with an oligarch as a cleaner, and when he watched the cameras, he gave her a house as a gift. Sarah and Ariana were best friends. They were always and everywhere together. It just so happened that the girls lived in the same house, and from childhood they were considered girlfriends. To school together, to the disco together. But there was a slight difference between the two girls. Ariana was always well dressed, in fancy dresses, with makeup and hair. Sarah dressed modestly, practically did not use makeup. She was a grey mouse. Well, how long will you be waiting? Stood Ariana outside her girlfriend's gate and shouted out the window to her. Now, wait, I'll do the dishes, and then I'll go out, Sarah said calmly. She didn't want to go anywhere at all, but she could never say no to a friend, and her mom told her to stick with Ariana. You, what are you wearing again today? A friend on the street was looking at Sarah. And what do not you like? The dress. Like a dress, she shook off the hem with her hands, as if it was in something dirty. We're not going to the library, we're going to a disco. Ariana snorted, proudly raising her head and walking ahead of her friend. Sarah had always put up with her best friend's antics, never said anything, you could tell. At school, too, even though the girls were together, they always seemed to be apart. Everyone saw Ariana as the best and most popular girl in the class, or class, for that matter, of the whole school. And Sarah was her errand boy. She'd help her learn her lessons, she'd help her cheat on tests. If she needed anything, she'd find it and bring it to her. Sometimes she even carried the bag for her best friend. Sarah, you're like Ariana's personal maid. The boys laughed at her. Give me a break, it's a real friendship. Somehow it didn't hurt. The girl really saw their communication as a true mutual friendship. She believed that now she was helping Ariana, and one day she would help her. When the girls were in high school, Ariana couldn't talk about anything except how she was going to go to Washington. All topics, whatever they were, came down to that. Here, look at this dress, she showed Sarah in the magazine. Why are you with these dresses running around like a chicken with an egg? You need to think about other things, about education, about relatives, about something vital, said her girlfriend in response. You don't understand anything. Come to Washington from the provinces. We'll see right away. Ariana pouted her lips and looked away from her. Trust me, whatever dress you wear, it'll still look like you're not from Washington, Sarah chided her. Oh, come on. Let's see who gets what. The fashionista further flipped through magazines. They could spend hours together. All the while, Ariana talked non-stop about how she would come to Washington, what she would do there, how she would study, what kind of husband she would have. That was a whole separate story. I don't understand why I need to study. I will come to Washington, meet a rich man, marry him, and live happily, as many not very smart girls reasoned Ariana. Yeah, and these men are standing in line waiting for her to come to us so they can fall in love with her. Laughed back at her friend. Who's to say you know anything about it? Have you ever even kissed a guy? Frowned the girl's eyebrows. Maybe she did. What do you care? The other one didn't want to talk about it. The arguments took place every day. But even after that, Sarah could not understand why she should go to Washington just for the sake of some prince. When the girl was in 11th grade, her mother got very sick. She took care of her, bought medicine, cooked for her. When the woman recovered, she had to prepare for exams. Why do you always disappear at home as if you were 50 years old instead of 17? Ariana told her. And what, at 50 everyone disappears at home? Did not understand her friend. Well, I don't know at what time they start disappearing home, but now we are young. It's time to go out, go to discos, meet guys. The girl spun on the spot. I don't care. Sarah averted her gaze. When it was the end of May and exams were due, Ariana came to Sarah. "I'm scared," she told her. "What?" The other one didn't understand. What? Exams? I don't know anything. I didn't prepare, like that dragonfly. I sang the Red Summer and didn't have time to look back." She quoted a fable. "Well, there's still a couple days. Sit down and read," her girlfriend suggested. "Sarah, please write cheat sheets," her friend begged. "I'll do my best," she sighed and went home. She spent the whole night writing cheat sheets that were both small and clear, in case Ariana didn't understand something. After her exams, she had to go to enroll. Ariana had no doubts where she would go. She didn't care what institute she would go to, who she would study for, and everything else. The main thing was to have her best friend with her, and it was the capital. "I'm not going in case Mom gets sick again," Sarah told her. "What are you talking about? Mom. Everything will be fine with your mom. Call her every day. If something is wrong, you'll get on the train and come back," the girl said nervously. "Okay, I'll think about it. Going home that one." "Daughter, come on, I'll be fine. You can see I'm already feeling better, and you have your whole life ahead of you. What are you going to do in this backwater? There's no work here. Go to the capital, listen to your friend," her mother told her. "Well, Mom," she wanted to add something. "No, Mom," I said, "pack your bags and go with Ariana." The woman insisted. I had to agree. So Sarah and Ariana entered the same institute. And even though Ariana had somehow passed by the scores, Sarah had no doubts about her knowledge. They were placed in a dormitory and began their studies. "Sarah, let's go to the club tonight, I was there last night with the girls, funky, lots of guys," Ariana told her. "Come on, what club in the middle of the week? Let's do our homework first, learn everything, maybe on the weekend and go," answered her. "What study? You have only one thing in your head. You're fixated on your mother, your home, your studies. You should have fun while you're young." She kept repeating it over and over again. "How are you going to pass your exams?" thought the girl. That was her test question. "And you won't help me? Won't you give me an outline to write off?" she told her. "You know I will. Why do you ask?" Sarah averted her eyes from her. "Well, that's how I'm gonna pass. I didn't know what my friend was worried about." "Okay, now you'll pass with my help, and then how will you live? I won't be around for the rest of my life." Sarah spoke to her differently. "How do you know? Or maybe you will." Ariana lived life to the fullest. No entreaties were of any use to her. She knew what she wanted and was only going for it. Every day, the girl disappeared somewhere. She went to clubs, met some guys, came home in an inadequate state. Her roommate put up with it all, wrote notes for her, let her cheat on tests, wrote cheat sheets for the two of them, and everything else. But it had to end at some point. "And what? You've been through so many guys. Which one is your dream?" Sarah told her once. "Oh, you know a lot," sat Ariana on the bed. It was obvious she just needed to sleep now. After passing all the exams, Ariana almost got expelled, but her roommate helped her retake everything, and Sarah was going home. "Are you with me?" she asked her friend. "What should I do there in your collective farm?" she answered. "Well, as what? You have parents there. Think of your mother. She hasn't seen you for so long." The girl didn't understand her. "So what, mother? Let her think for herself." Ariana waved her off. Sarah didn't listen to anyone. She packed her things and went to her parents' house. Her mother was really better. She was happy about her daughter's success. It seemed that everything was going to be fine. "Well, you tell me how you study there. Saw Washington. What did you do? Where did you go?" asked Julia to her daughter. "Mom, where did we go? So many assignments that my head from the table cannot lift. I sit only in the notes," complained to her that one. "I see. And how's Ariana doing?" That was also of interest to the woman. "Normal," the girl answered one-wordedly. She didn't want to tell what her friend was doing in town. You don't want to talk, then? The woman nodded her head. After that, all summer long Sarah helped her mother in the yard, in the vegetable garden. With the animals, there were not so many of them left, because her strength and health were not enough for everything. At the end of August, Sarah went back to school. Bye, dear Cole. Don't forget. Saw her mother off at the station. Sure, goodbye. She waved her hand. The girl arrived at the dormitory. Ariana was sleeping on the bed. Jesus, look what you've become like. She woke her up. And who? Ariana told her. She was wearing bright makeup, a short skirt, some kind of top. The clothes were so short it was like they weren't even there. Sarah sighed and began to tidy up her room and arrange her things. Oh, leave it alone. Didn't realize what she was doing, Ariana. If I leave this alone, you and I will be living in a month just like a dumpster. Her friend stopped and looked at her. Listen to me. I'll tell you such a story. You'll be amazed. The girl drank water and looked at her friend as if she wanted to tell her something secret. Well, sat down across from her neighbor. I was at a club the other day and I met a cool dude, and he's a student too. But I know for a fact that his parents are rich and he's not a poor guy. I've got to hook up with him, and then I'll be all set. She put her fingers together. Well, I congratulate you. Sarah shrugged, got up and continued cleaning. And what? You're not even going to say anything to me? Ariana didn't understand her. And what to tell you? I am glad that you have a friend with whom you want to have a relationship. The girl herself has not yet thought about any meetings, and even more so about living together, and some kind of marriage. Fine, just as she was a grey mouse, so she remained, as if her friend resented her. Ariana didn't know why she was angry with her friend. Maybe she was jealous of her, but she couldn't admit it to herself. So, will you go to the club with me? She asked her once, when it was time for the first session of the second year. You know I don't go anywhere with you. She turned to her. But please, Sarah, Nanny is coming over tonight. He's with his friends, and I don't want to be there alone, she begged her. Okay. If I go, it'll only be for a little while, Sarah said. She couldn't believe what she was saying. As they were getting ready, Ariana looked at the person she was supposed to go to the party with tonight. And what? Are you going to go in this one? She pointed down at her clothes. What's wrong with you again? Sarah didn't understand. Well, I don't know. Dress more youthful. Do you want me to give you my clothes? Said the girl. No, I'm comfortable in mine. Sarah stood her ground. Okay, suit yourself. Ariana rolled her eyes. She had used the saying about an ugly friend ever since she'd realized in high school that her friends were grey mice. And really, when they were dating, she was the only one all the guys paid attention to. Today, if Sarah was going to go out in that knit sweater of hers and some strange pants, it was only to Ariana's advantage. They came to the club where Sarah was for the first time. The music was thundering very hard. It was hitting her ears, her head. Ariana immediately dragged her to the bar. She ordered some cocktails. I won't, mouthed her friend. Come on, we're in a club. Everyone's drinking cocktails here. Look. Ariana looked around. You know I don't drink alcohol at all. I'll be very sick, the girl stubbornly said. Oh, suit yourself. She took her glass as well, sliding it toward her. Afterward, Sarah saw several young men heading towards them. Hi. Right away, Ariana started acting differently. Oh, girls, the guys came over and ordered some cocktails too. After that, everyone went to the dance floor, but Sarah stayed near the counter. She sat on a high stool, just watching the people here. So, are you coming with us today? Shouted Nanny in Ariana's ear. No, you what? We have to go to the dorm, do our homework and learn everything, she told him with a smart face. What lessons? What are you doing? He didn't understand, but Ariana decided to play the decent girl, so he wouldn't think she was after his money or something. You understand, in our life without education, you can't get anywhere at all. You have to learn first, and then everything else. She remembered what Sarah, her mom, and everyone else had told her. Wow, and I thought you were so down on everything, coming to the clubs, hanging out here. He laughed at her. No, Nanny, I'm not like that at all, she answered him. Okay, somehow he got away from her right away and headed back to the bar. The guy looked at Sarah, who was sitting there, rolled his eyes, turned away. Nanny, why are you so offended? Ariana came up behind him. Come on, what's there to talk about? He was talking to her over the music. I mean, what's to talk to me? She didn't understand. I just invited you to hang out at a company. If you don't want to, then you and I are not on the same path, Nanny answered her. It doesn't work that way. She was acting like someone else. Yeah, you know, I'll just wave to anyone and she'll come with me, he told the girl. Anything at all, she replied. Do you want me to prove it? He asked her. Of course I do, but what if they say no? Ariana looked at him slyly. Never, he was sure of his words. Okay, then let me pick a girl for you to woo, she answered him. Take your pick. It didn't matter to the guy. You could see it on his face. And there she is, sitting behind me. Without turning around, the girl nodded her head. It's your friend, what are you doing? Nanny couldn't understand. Yeah, that's my friend, and she's even worse than me. Go to the girl, try to woo her. If you succeed with her, then we'll see. Hi, he told her. Hi, she looked around. What are you sitting there, bored? He asked her. No, I'm not bored, I'm just sitting here. The music is playing really loud. I'll probably go home now, the girl said calmly. And I'll see her off. He was ready to do anything just to get her to agree to go with him. What do you mean, walk you out? You're here with Ariana. She looked over to where the girl was dancing. Who the hell is Ariana with? Oh, that one, no? Don't think so, we're just friends, he answered her. All right, very embarrassed Sarah. So are we going or not? He elbowed her. Sure enough, she took another look in the direction where her friend was and headed with her boyfriend towards the exit. Ariana saw all of this out of the corner of her eye. She smiled, figuring nothing would fall to him. Nanny and Sarah walked through the city streets at night. He kept joking, talking, showing her things. And why is it always me talking? Tell me something about yourself, he asked her. What to tell me? A simple girl. I came from the province. I study. There is nothing more to tell. She became more and more embarrassed. Clearly, he noted to himself, Ariana was right that she was a mess. When they reached the dorm, he wanted to hug her, but Sarah pulled away. What are you doing? She asked him. Why, it's goodbye. I just wanted to kiss you on the cheek, he told her. Not the first time, she answered him, pulled her hands away, and ran through the dorm doors. Her cheeks were burning, her hands were shaking. Sarah went into her room, changed her clothes, lay down on her bed, but she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Nanny. The girl had never met anyone or talked to anyone before, let alone kissed or anything else. And now she was wild that the guy her friend had met was hitting on her. After a while, Ariana came home. There was no light in the room, so Sarah pretended to be asleep so she wouldn't talk to her. There was a New Year's Eve session ahead, and then they could go home. There was no way Sarah could wait for that time. Nanny started coming to see her every day. He'd bring her a flower or a soft toy. He asked her to go for walks, but they didn't go far. She was very shy of him. When there was a week left before the session, she asked him not to come for a while. I understand, but I have to study for my exams, so I don't think we can see each other for a while. Sarah struggled to find the words. Why, how? The boy stood there, unable to believe that this grey mouse had not fallen for his charm, his pretty words and his looks. But if he had promised Ariana, he had to get her. Okay, get ready for the session, pass it, and then call me when you're free, he told her. Ariana stopped talking to her friend. Ariana, what are you doing? Sarah asked her. Nothing. It's just that you knew I liked this guy, and you started dating him anyway. How decent are you then? She told her. Well, I'm sorry. He asked me to escort him. I agreed. Nanny told me that you were just friends. She tried to defend herself, and the young man. Yep, friends. The girlfriend rolled her eyes again. The session was over, and Sarah went home as usual. She had to visit her mom. At home, they had not yet had time to sit down at the table and talk, when the girl began to tell that she had met a young man and that they were now starting a relationship. Oh, my daughter, if he is from a rich family, beware of him, for he may take advantage of you and leave you, my mother used to say. I know everything, but I can't. You don't know how good he is, the girl said about Nanny. They're all good until they get what they want. Julia almost cried. After a few days of rest at her mom's place, the girl went back to the hostel. Nanny started coming every day again. One day he came and invited her to a party that was going to be held outside the city. I don't even know whether to go or not, Sarah told him. On the one hand, she really wanted to be near Nanny, and on the other hand, she was afraid and shy that there would be a lot of strangers there. But eventually the girl agreed, and they went that weekend. Nanny was very polite. He introduced her to all his friends. Then they sat on the swing for a long time, and then Nanny started kissing Sarah. At first, she somehow deflected from him, but he looked her in the eyes so much that the girl gave in. He pulled her against him, kissed her again, then picked her up in his arms, and went up to the house. Sarah understood everything, but she couldn't resist because she really liked this young man. He brought her into the house, put her on the couch and started kissing her, and she just, as if she was electrocuted. She was lying there, and she couldn't move. After it was over, he got up and immediately left the house. She lay there for a while, waiting for him to come back, and then she got up, got dressed, and went out. Everyone was sitting in the makeshift gazebo, and when she got there, Nanny was the first to ask her what she was doing here and why she wasn't going home. Nanny, how come you called me here? She looked at him with surprised eyes. You, such a grey mouse. Why do I need you? He answered her and he continued to laugh. What are you talking about? She didn't understand. What you hear is what I say, as if he was snapping at her. Sarah felt so hurt. She realized that this man was just taking advantage of her. There was a reason her mother had told her to be careful with these rich men. She ran out of the gate. She didn't know which way to run, where to go. There were no cars around. She walked along the road, tears rolling from her eyes. Not knowing what to do, the girl somehow got to the city. Only in the morning, she was in the dormitory. She didn't go to her classes today. It was the first time in all the time they had been studying. Ariana wasn't in the dorm, but that didn't upset the girl one bit. She didn't want to see anyone right now. Taking a quick shower, she changed her clothes. Sarah packed her things and just went home. Now she wanted to cry to her mom and never see anyone again, neither Nanny nor Ariana. And Nanny had rested and was already in the dormitory in the evening. He called Ariana, told her everything, said that if necessary, he could even provide evidence and witnesses. No, even one word from you is enough for me, she laughed back. So, will you come with me today? He told her. Yeah, and you'll take advantage of me just like you took advantage of my quiet girlfriend, she spoke back. Come on, why did I do all this then? Just to have you with me? He looked at her. Well, we'll see. Come back this weekend. And where is she, by the way? Ariana asked about Sarah. I wouldn't know. I did everything you asked. She fell for it, and I didn't need her anymore, he replied. On the weekend, the guy picked up a girl and they went for a walk. First, they drove around the city. Then they went to one friend's house and then another. The night was spent in a club. Then he brought Ariana home. Since you and I have already started to be friends and communicate, can you introduce me to your parents? She asked him. With a parent, clarified the young man. I don't get it, looked Ariana at him. My mom died when I was 13, and now I only live with my dad, he explained to her. Well, okay. With a parent, the girl shrugged. She didn't care, as long as she could get into this family as quickly as possible. Nanny really liked Ariana, and when he'd left her, he'd thought why not introduce her to his father. He might start treating him differently when he saw that his son had started a serious relationship. He promised the girl that as soon as he talked to her father, he would take her to meet him. "Can't we just come over and meet you?" Ariana asked him a question. "No, you understand, my father is a big businessman, and he doesn't accept anyone in the house just like that. You have to warn him," as if Nanny was justifying himself. "Okay. That's okay, I'll wait," she smiled. He came home. Father wasn't there, as usual. Maria was in the kitchen. This young woman helped them with all their chores. She did not like to be alone in the house with Nanny. "So, Maria, is dinner ready?" He came up behind her and touched her on the back of the head. "Nanny, please don't do that," she replied irritably. "What did I do?" He didn't get it. "You know yourself what you did." She turned around and went into the kitchen. "Do you know when Dad's coming?" He followed her. "No, he doesn't report to me," the woman replied without turning around. "Okay, let's wait. I want to bring the bride into the house," Nanny said still as cheerfully. "Oh, I wonder who looked at you." Maria rattled the dishes. "Why, am I so ugly you can't even look at me?" He sat down on a chair. "Well, why can't you? You can look, but you're like that beautiful apple. There's something to look at on the outside, but inside there are only worms," she told him. Maria then cooked something, put it in a plate, and took it to the communal table. "Thank you," muttered Nanny, and began to eat. A couple hours later, the father came home. He saw that his son was already home and smiled. "Wow," he walked up to him. "What did you want?" Nanny had a good relationship with his father, but lately their relationship had deteriorated a bit. "This is the first time I've seen you home for dinner in years," Frank muttered to him. "I just have one piece of news for you," Nanny told him. "I'm listening, you say." The man thought the son was going to go back to begging for money or something. "I met a girl," silenced the young man. "Well, go on. What, she's pregnant? Need money for an abortion?" speculated the man. "Why did you immediately start talking about bad things?" Nanny didn't understand him. "Why bad things?" The son was surprised. "You never bring anything good into the house, so I wonder why you're letting me know about it." Frank walked over, said hello to Mary, washed his hands and sat down at the table. The woman immediately began arranging plates and utensils. "Dad, I'm telling you seriously, I met Ariana at a club. I don't deny that I met her there, but trust me, she's a very nice girl," Nanny said, glaring at his father. "You mean you want me to meet her?" Frank was smiling now. "I've been talking about it for half an hour, and you can't understand it," Nanny began nervously. "Okay, calm down, bring your girlfriend, let's have a look at her, let's get acquainted. I don't mind you having a family at all, and it would be even better if you gave me a grandchild," the father said calmly to his son. "That's it, Dad, if you agree, next weekend, please don't be late from work, Ariana and I will be here." Nanny was so happy that his father didn't discourage him, but agreed to meet Ariana. "Hello, love." They met the next day. "Ah, Nanny, where shall we go today?" The girl looked at him. "I don't know where we're going today, but I have one piece of good news for you," he told her. "What's the news?" She was anticipating what he was going to tell her about his father. "I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he said you and I could come over the weekend to get acquainted." The young man smiled. "That's great. Now you and I need to think about what I should give him as a present," the girl said. "You what? What presents? He has everything," laughed Nanny at her. "Okay, everything isn't everything, but I can't come empty-handed," she reflected. "Okay, we'll figure something out. There's still time before the weekend," the guy encouraged her. Ariana came home. Now that Sarah was gone, she didn't even have anyone to consult with. She thought about what to get the older man who had everything. Maybe a tie or a bottle of good wine, a lighter. But everything was jumbled up in her head. She never came up with anything. All week the girl had been very twitchy, nervous. It was not only because she had to meet Nanny's father, but also because her studies were going badly. Once again, she thought of Sarah. There was no one to write notes, no one to cheat from on tests, and so it all took its toll. When X day came, Nanny came to pick up Ariana, and they went to his house. "So, are you worried?" he asked her. "Well, how not to worry? It's the first time I meet the parents of the G." She was scared. She didn't finish and looked at Nanny with frightened eyes. "Well, finish your sentence," he smiled. "J, ni, ha," in syllables, and quietly she uttered, "Ariana, if all goes well and my father likes you, I promise you that our wedding is not far off." He took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. "And I believe you." She ducked her head into his shoulder. When they entered the house, they were greeted by Maria. As usual, her father was not at home. "Well, maybe it's for the best," Nanny said. He went to the hall, leading Ariana there. He paid no attention to Maria today. Not 15 minutes later, the doors opened and a man walked in. "Ah, Daddy, hello. And we are already waiting for you," walked towards him towards Nanny. Ariana followed his example and stood up too. "I see, as you promised, we have guests," my father said. "Yes, meet Ariana, my girlfriend, and this is Frank, my father." He introduced them to each other. Pleased, Ariana didn't know what to do and almost gave out a curtsy. The man saw that she was worried. He took her hand, kissed it, and led everyone to the table. By this time, Maria had already seated everything here. The table was set, the dishes were laid out. They sat down and began to talk. At first, the girl did not know what to talk about, how to do it, for they were from high society, and she came from the province. But when the conversation began, she realized that it was better to be herself than to pretend, because it was not always possible to find a way out of this situation. "Ariana, I like that you are studying at the institute and that you are so decent. I think since you come from such a town, you are a very good cook." He winked at his son. "Yes, I can cook." She looked at Maria. Of course, in her head she had thought that she would have a housekeeper, but she had never thought that she would cook or clean. Nanny took the girl home, and when he returned, her father was waiting for him in his study. "So, Dad, what do you think of her?" he asked him. "No way," he replied, "a simple provincial girl. If you like it, I approve. You can live together, date, marry, as long as you get your head together." "Then what? I can move Ariana here?" Nanny asked him. "Of course. Why would you want to go somewhere far away to visit her if you can always be here? Especially since I'm more often not at home than I am," he said. A week later, Nanny and Ariana had already moved all of the girl's few belongings into the house. She was just happy. "Nanny, I love you so much," she hugged him. "And I you," he kissed her. Now Ariana felt like she owned the place. She could ask Maria for water, and when she saw fingerprints on a glass, she just poured it on the floor for the housekeeper to clean and sweep up. "Why do you act like that?" Maria sometimes asked her. "How?" said Ariana arrogantly. "As if you are a full-fledged mistress here, but nobody has given you that right yet." The woman walked away downstairs. Of course, she didn't say anything to Frank because she thought he would believe her son first, not her. Maria knocked on the girl's door one day. "What do you want?" She opened the door. "Frank wants to see you. He's in his office," the woman said quietly. "What does he want from me?" Ariana wondered. She thought that the housekeeper had complained about her, and now he wanted to reprimand her. She went down the stairs and looked into the study. Come in," he smiled and waited for her to enter. "Hello." She walked in and sat down in a chair, Ariana had the look of a beaten dog. "What's going on with you? Why are you so sad? Or are you afraid of something?" The man didn't understand. "No, I'm not afraid of anything. Why did you summon me to you?" she asked him. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about Nanny. There's a great job where you don't have to do much, and he doesn't want any of that," the man told her. "And what can I do?" she asked him, already realizing why he had summoned her here. "If he loves you so much, talk to him about getting a job somewhere else. If he doesn't want to work for me or with me, maybe somewhere else would be good for him," he asked the girl. "Okay, I'll try to do something. Talk to him," she promised the man. She went back to her room, lay down on her bed, and thought that she was doing well, that life was good. Come to think of it, since Frank had spoken to her so confidentially today, she didn't need to think about anything else. She was on his list of close associates. Ariana lay back and smiled. "What's wrong with you?" Nanny, who had just entered the room, brought her out of her stupor. "Nothing. Why don't you want to work anywhere?" she asked him cheerfully, and stood up to approach her lover. "And why? My father has no money, and I have no money, and I have to work hard," he said simply. "Frank talked to me about it today," the girl admitted to him. "And what did you say to him?" Was interested in the young man. He sat down on the bed and looked at the girl. "That I would talk to you." She took a seat next to him. "So, did you talk?" He smirked. "Yes," she nodded and laughed, realizing what he meant. "That's it, calm down, I'll make my own arrangements with my father somehow." He pulled her to him and kissed her. After that, the young people continued to live as they had lived before. Every day in the evening they left the house, went to a club or somewhere else. None of them even thought about work. A month passed when the conversation with Ariana took place. They were still at home when Frank arrived. "Where are you going?" he asked in a friendly manner, but it was only an appearance. "Dad, don't get me started," Nanny stretched out. "I'm not starting, but it's time for you to start." The man sat down on the chair. "How can't you understand? I don't want to, and I'm not ready for it yet." The young man didn't look at his father. "Oh, what are you talking about?" Frank raised one eyebrow. "What's wrong?" My son didn't understand. "How can you not understand? I don't have much left. Who will provide for you later? Don't think that the firm where I work is mine. I have a partner. And if after I leave, he buys a few shares from the employees, then that's it. You won't see any business." The man got up from his seat, started walking around the room and shouting. "Don't be so worried," Ariana wanted to reassure him. "And you stay out of it. I thought I'd find an ally in your person, but you turned out to be the same." Sat back in the chair father. Silence hung in the room. It was oppressive. Everyone realized that everyone had to figure it out for themselves. "That's it, father. We'll go." Nanny stood up, put on his jacket, took Ariana's hand, and they walked towards the exit. "I see," Frank said with a sigh. He didn't realize at what point he'd let things slip and his son had gotten away with it. The young returned only by morning, when the head of the family was no longer at home. "So, will you marry me?" Nanny asked Ariana. He had suggested it to her more than once today when they were at the club, but she only smiled and gave no answer. "What do you think? Of course, yes." She put her arms around him. They fell into the bed and fell asleep like that. Not even 2 hours later, the guy was already awake. He had a plan he wanted to surprise his girlfriend with. He went downstairs, went outside, and drove to his father's house. "Dad, hi." Walked into his office. "I can't believe you're here to apply for a job," smiled my father. "Wait, not about that yet. I didn't want to bring it up today." "What about?" Frank wanted to know. "I proposed to Ariana. I'd like to ask to top up my card to buy a nice ring, and the rest of whatever else she asks for." Nanny wasn't even embarrassed that he was just asking. "Promise me you won't procrastinate with the kids," his father asked him. "Of course," As soon as we get married, we'll start trying right away. It seemed that for the sake of money, the guy was willing to do anything. Okay, you can tell Ariana to start picking out her dress and getting ready. There's a lot more in store for her. Lately, the man has only been sighing. When Nanny informed his friend about it, her joy was unbounded. She first jumped on the bed, then hugged and later kissed her beloved. From that day on, the girl began to prepare for her most important day. The young decided not to hurry. Now was not the time of year when Ariana wanted to make a wedding. "Shall we wait?" she asked Nanny as they lay in bed. "Sure, whatever you say, love." He was actually afraid if they got married, his father would say he had his own family, and now it was up to him to provide for it. This is how the youth continued to live in the house. "Maria!" Ariana shouted from the second floor. "Oh, don't yell, please." The young man wrinkled his nose. His head was very sore after yesterday. "And here, where is she?" The girl turned to him. She was having a hard time herself. "I don't know. Go down and see. She's not your maid. She doesn't have to go and serve," Nanny said in a coy way. "And why do they pay her money then? I can cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner myself," she said indignantly. "Go and see." The boy didn't know how to get away from the girl's questions. "Here I go." Ariana walked out the doors, slamming them hard in the process. She went downstairs and saw Maria standing with her bags in the hall. "Hello." The housekeeper looked haughtily at her. "Where are you going?" the girl asked loudly. "I forgot to ask you," Maria mumbled under her breath, but Ariana heard her. "What?" She was so outraged and indignant. "I'm leaving, Frank's on it." The woman picked up her bags and headed for the exit. "Stop!" The girl shouted after her, but she didn't even look back, just walked out and closed the door behind her. "Nanny, she's gone." Ariana came back into the room and spoke confusedly. "Calm down, please," he pleaded with her for the umpteenth time. The girl sat down on the bed and folded her arms on her chest. She really had to do everything here now. At that moment, Sarah was taking a leave of absence from the institute. She realized that no one could help her here. She had to go home. The first time she had come to her mother after everything that had happened. She had told her nothing, but now it was time to confess. "Mummy," she walked into the house. "Daughter, why are you here?" Julia was surprised. "Mom, I'm sorry." She fell into her lap and cried. "Come on, get up, tell me," she asked. "Just take it easy," Sarah told her. "What happened?" They went into the kitchen together. "You know how right you were back then when you warned me not to mess with rich guys." She couldn't speak further, tears choking her. He did take advantage. Her mother shook her head. She didn't need to say anything. She understood everything herself. "I'm expecting a baby," the girl said quietly. She was sobbing. "It's okay. Mummy, don't." She saw her eyes. "Honey, go home, get some rest. I'll be fine," her mother pleaded with her. "Okay." Sarah didn't want anything scary to happen. She arrived at the house not knowing what to do or what to grab onto. But after a while, fatigue took its toll, and Sarah went to sleep. She woke up from some alarm, opened her eyes, looked at the ceiling for a long time, not realizing where she was. Then she got up quickly, boiled some porridge, and went to her mother's house. "Hello," she walked past the doctor. "Girl, wait, Julia, didn't she come with you yesterday?" He caught up with her. "Yeah, what happened?" Sarah was getting really worried now. "Nothing yet, but..." He fell silent. "Speak," the girl shouted hysterically. "Your mother needs expensive medication," was all the man said. "I hear you." She walked down the hallway to the ward, a list of things the mother needed in her hands. "Mummy, hi, don't worry." She smiled with a full-mouth smile, though the cats were scratching at her heart. "Come in, it's okay," the woman told her. She was lying in bed, leaning back on her pillow. "You scared me so much last night," Sarah exhaled. "Nothing," Julia turned her attention to the list in her daughter's hands. "Mummy, I love you so much." Her daughter came up to her and hugged her. "What's this?" With one eye, the woman pointed to the paper. "Yes, that's right." The girl waved the question away. "I realize that nothing happens that easily. Let me see," her mother insisted. "It's the medication you were prescribed." Sarah couldn't hide anything. "Maybe you should call your failed suitor," suggested the mother, though she was not greedy and not mercantile, but she realized that her daughter would start doing something to find money for her by any means. "What are you, Mom? Don't even think about it," her daughter said indignantly. "That's it, I'm not getting involved at all, just," suggested. The woman started to get up. "What are you doing? Lie down." Sarah couldn't let it go. Today Sarah saw that her mother was feeling better, that the crisis had passed, that she could go home and think things over. She arrived, made herself some hot chamomile tea, sat by the window, and began to think about where to get money. She sat there for 2 hours, but she could think of nothing. Sarah, hey, saw her neighbor on the street. "Hello," she waved her hand. "How's it going?" The woman stopped. "Mom is in the hospital." For some reason Sarah felt like telling her everything, or maybe she just wanted someone to talk to. "Come in," was Angelica's welcoming. "Thanks, I won't be long." It all came at once, the girl told her. "Nothing, you'll see. Everything will work out." The neighbor sat her down at the table, put various pies on the table, poured milk into a glass. "Thank you," smiled Sarah. "You're welcome," she replied. Sarah began to share with Angelica what had happened to her lately. "This is how we live," she finished speaking. "What a scoundrel." Julia felt sorry for him. She shook her head from side to side and sighed. "Yeah." The girl put a list of medications on the table. "Oh wow." The neighbor was surprised. "Yes. Where do you get that much?" The guest looked at her. "Yeah," she stretched out. "Look, Angelica, I saw a summer house on your property." Sarah began to tell her. The thought had come to her recently, while she was visiting a neighbor. Yeah, she was all ears. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah spoke in riddles. "Jesus, what are you procrastinating for? Ask already." Couldn't wait for the girl to say. "I could sell our house and buy all this." She pointed to a piece of paper with a list, but not only that. "What's that got to do with me?" Angelica still didn't understand. "Until I find a place to live, I'll stay with you. It's summer. I won't get cold," Sarah finally said. "Look, I'm certainly not sorry, but if there's anything wrong, promise me you'll tell me." She took the girl at her word. Of course, wondered Sarah, why all the promises? After that, without telling her mother, she put the house up for sale. Now her mother's health was more important to her, and she needed a lot for her child. She did not think about the future, hoping that the remaining amount would be enough, at least to buy a room in a communal apartment. Buyers were found quickly. The house was sold, though not for the amount she wanted, but it was enough. Sarah thanked everyone. She moved all her things into her neighbor's summer house. Most of the furniture had to be left to the new owners. "Angelica, hello." She walked into her house. "Oh, Sarah, come in." She was glad to see her. "I just came to tell you that I've been living here since today," the girl said. "Great, you come by if you need anything." She watched Sarah walk to the summer house. The very next day, all the medicines for her mother were bought. While her mother was in the hospital, she continued to live in the small house that was now her home. The neighbor, of course, welcomed her, but Sarah never stayed overnight. Sarah, a nurse called out to her when she came to the hospital for the umpteenth time. Everyone here already knew her. Yes, she turned around. "Your mom will be discharged any day now. She's feeling much better. And it's all thanks to your care and nurturing." They walked down the hall together. "How nice. I'm tired of being alone." The visitor almost wept. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," squeezed the girl's hand in hers. The daughter came to her mother's room and immediately told her the good news. But there was more to tell about the house. "Mummy," she entered the room happy as usual. "My daughter came and they hugged. Listen, you just do not worry in our house. I have started a big repair. I want to surprise you. And at this time rented us an apartment," she lied to the woman. "Where did you get all that money?" Julia couldn't figure it out. "It's okay. Don't worry," she looked at her mother. It was the month of August. The girl realized that when it got colder, the summer house would be uncomfortable. She had already been looking for an apartment to rent for a week. There was very little money left. They wouldn't have enough to buy even a simple place to live. Sarah found one, and by the time her mother was discharged, she had indeed rented an apartment. Quietly, she led her mom down the hospital hallway. "It's okay. You care about me a lot," Julia smiled. They arrived at the place where the girl was now settled. "Here, this is where we'll be living for now," Sarah waved her hands. "Good," sighed the woman. She was glad her daughter was already so independent. They started living, setting up the children's place. Since the apartment was one room, it was just a corner. Although the daughter had spent all the money, now she didn't regret it, watching how happy her mother was. "Mammy, breakfast," Sarah called out to her in the morning when she had everything ready. "What's all this for?" The woman didn't understand. "Don't say anything. Just sit down and eat," she greeted her in the morning. "Tell me, when will the renovation of our house be finished?" Julia kept asking. "Wait a little longer," her daughter asked her. Months passed. The girl realized that 2 more months, and they would have nowhere to live. She could not admit to her mother that she had no money, but there was nowhere to get it. One evening the doorbell rang, and when Sarah opened it, Angelica was standing on the doorstep. "I thought I'd never find you again," she said, and went inside. "Oh, the neighbors," Julia rejoiced. Sarah didn't have time to tell the neighbor that her mother didn't know anything. "You shouldn't have sold your house after all," she said on the doorstep. "How did you sell it?" The mother turned to her daughter. "Mammy, don't worry, I'll tell you everything." Sarah looked at her neighbor. They walked to the kitchen, where the hostess made delicious tea. Angelica sat and looked at the mother and daughter, who just kept silent. "I'm going to go lie down," Julia said. She went to her room. "Why would you do that? She knew nothing," Sarah whispered to Angelica. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize," she frightened. The girl went to the room where her mother had gone. She was lying on the couch and did not move. "Mom," she called out to her, but she didn't answer. "What's wrong with her?" Angelica came in next. "Call an ambulance," Sarah shouted. Now, that one's hands were shaking, and she couldn't even hit 2 digits. "Ouch," grabbed the girl's stomach. "What's wrong with you?" The former roommate wasn't herself anymore. "I feel like I'm in labor." The pain was so bad she couldn't stand up straight. "And why did I even come?" Angelica was already whispering. The ambulance came. It took not 1, but 2 women at once. Angelica wanted to go with them, but they wouldn't take her. When they were at the hospital, Sarah could not find out anything, as she was in a very dire situation herself. Her pregnancy was only 8 months old, and now the difficult labor was beginning. A few hours later, a dark-haired boy lay on the girl's chest. "Hi, Harvey," his newfound mom told him. "You'll soon meet your grandmother." "I'm afraid it can't be done," held Sarah's hand by the girl in the white robe. "Why is that?" she wondered. "Julia was gone a few hours ago," the nurse spoke softly. "No, not again," sobbed Sarah quietly so as not to frighten the baby. "I'm sorry to break the news, but it also happens," at which point Harvey was carried away from his mother. After that, Sarah was transferred to the ward. She lay and looked at the ceiling. She couldn't believe that everything had been for nothing, both the house and the money, but there was nothing she could do now. "And here we are, Mommy. There is nothing to lie here and do nothing, except Sonny," roared her baby. "Come here, my little one." She took Harvey in her arms. She learned everything right away. She had no trouble feeding him. Not 2 days later, The doctor told them to get ready for discharge. Sarah realized that if the mother and child were all right, no one would keep them here for long. The same Angelica, her neighbor, came to meet her. There was no one else. "Here, look, Sarah, what an envelope I brought you. It's not new, but it looks very good." She gave the nurse what she was going to swaddle the little boy in. "Thank you for everything." The girl was a little angry with her, but there was no going back now. They arrived at the very apartment Sarah had rented. "We should probably go to the store," former neighbor Angelica told her. "You know, I'll do everything myself," she asked her. She was tired inside. Her arms were down. She didn't want to do anything. She also had to bury her mother. All the days while she was in labor and in the hospital, her mother had been somewhere else. "But what about the funeral? Let me at least help with that," Angelica asked her. "Okay, you can help with that," Sarah agreed with her, because she knew that the child would be left with no one. Either she would agree to the neighbor's help, or she would have to carry the child everywhere. When everything was done, neighbors and acquaintances sat around the table and remembered Julia. Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. She was weeping. Someone gave her a sedative, which she drank, and one woman came close to her and sat down across from her. "I don't want to talk to anyone right now," the girl told her. "Come on, pull yourself together." She took her by the shoulders and shook her hard. "What are you doing?" She looked at her. "That's what I'm doing. You just gave birth to a child. He's a baby. He needs a mom. And not in such a sissy, but in a normal, good mom, who can and will do everything," the woman told her. And indeed, Sarah realized that there was no way she could relax right now. She wasn't taking the baby anywhere. He's hers. She wanted him. She's been waiting for him. And now she had to gather all the strength she had and do everything just for him. She thanked everyone for coming today. "Do you want me to walk you out?" Angelica asked her. "No, thanks. I'll do it myself." The girl took the sleeping baby and went home with him. Good thing she'd taken care of everything in advance. And Harvey had a stroller and a crib and some other things. It was necessary to look for money for the apartment. But where to find it and how to earn it, the girl had no idea. Angelica offered her help, and no matter what the young mother thought about it, she accepted it, because she had to feed her child, and to feed him, she had to feed herself. "Angelica, will you sit with Harvey and I'll go to the store?" Sarah asked her one day. "Of course, what are you asking?" agreed the woman. The girl went to the same store every time. Here she could both buy goods and borrow them, but knowing that there would be nothing to pay back, she never bought much. And today Sarah went to the store and thought nothing of it. When she entered the store, she immediately saw a familiar silhouette. She wanted to turn around and run out, but Sarah did not have time to do it. "Bah, who do I see? My favorite friend." Ariana turned to her and opened her arms for a hug. "Hello," the one said quietly. "What's wrong with you?" Our grey mouse got even greyer as her once best friend started laughing at her as usual. "Ariana, please don't," shook her head. "Why, is she in some kind of trouble?" Sarah looked at her and saw that she was wearing nice clothes and was all of a piece. "And you, what are you doing here?" asked the girlfriend. "I'm here to invite my mother to the wedding," Ariana said arrogantly. "I see, congratulations," nodded Sarah to her. She walked up to the counter. The clerk already knew what she wanted. "What's, Sarah, the usual?" the woman asked her. "Yes," she nodded her head. "Here, take some semolina. Harvey will boil his own. It will be delicious. He will be full." The woman put a bag of cereal on the counter. "Come on, he's too young." Sarah didn't want to take him. "Take it, I'm just giving it to you. I don't need anything," the store assistant insisted. "Oh, someone's having babies." No sooner had someone printed someone, and now you have already given birth, laughed at her friend. At that moment, Sarah looked at her and thought how she could endure all the humiliation and not see what her childhood friend was truly like. It's none of your business." She wanted to leave the store, but Ariana stood in the road. "You know what? I'm inviting you to visit," she told her. "I can't. I have a small child," spoke the girl, and did not look at the interlocutor. "So what when it was a nuisance? In a few days, a driver will come to pick me up. Be ready, I'll pick you up." Ariana didn't do all this out of good intentions. She wanted to show her friend, who never believed in her, how she was living now. "Okay, let's see. I wanted Sarah to get out of here sooner." She walked home, a storm inside her. She had a lot of emotions for Ariana, and almost all of them were negative. At home, she thanked Angelica for agreeing to babysit Harvey. She cooked something to eat, fed the baby, and started doing chores. It was only a week until rent was due. She sat on the bed, looking at the sleeping child, and thought that she should push her pride away and just ask Ariana for help. After all, she remembered how she used to think that she would help the girl now, and then she would help her. So she decided, taking a long time to tune in. As promised, Ariana arrived at her place 3 days later. When Sarah opened the door, she saw her all dressed up on the doorstep. "Hello, dear friend, are you ready to go?" she asked her, and saw that she had her bag packed. "Wow, you're really prepared," was surprised by the girl. And Sarah did pack a bag with all the things she needed. She didn't have much of her own, but Harvey had almost a whole bag. She agreed with Angelica that if Ariana didn't help her with the money for the apartment, she would either sell it or take the crib and dresser that were for the baby. They went downstairs, got in the car. "Let's go." "Well, how about it?" Like a hostess sat in the interior of Ariana's car and commanded the driver where to go, what to do. "Yes, of course, girlfriend. I can see you've gotten everything you wanted," sighed the girl. "Yeah, I'm not a gray mouse who can give birth to anyone," she laughed at her, not even knowing whose baby it was. They pulled up to a nice house, got out of the car. Ariana walked in front in high heels, and Sarah followed behind with the baby and her bag. When they entered the house, the landlady immediately said that she would now show Sarah her room. She led her through the first floor, opened the door. It was almost a pantry, but Sarah didn't care now, as long as she had somewhere to stay with the child. "Can I feed Harvey, put him to bed, and then you can show me around?" The girl tried to be friendly. "Yeah, sure. Do whatever you want," Ariana said woozily. While Sarah was minding her own business, Nanny returned to the house. When she heard his voice, she couldn't believe it. Harvey had fallen asleep, and she came out of her den. No sooner had she opened the door than she saw him. "You?" He turned to the girl, then looked at his wife-to-be in surprise. "Yeah, come on, you Nanny," called her to see how normal people lived. Ariana walked over to him and hugged him. Sarah didn't say anything, just lowered her eyes. She didn't want to be here now. Why hadn't she asked who she was living with? But in the end, it didn't really matter. What if Ariana had said she lived with Tim? And for her to answer then too. As she thought, she needed to put her pride away and do what was best for the welfare of herself and the child. Nanny did not want to stay in the company of the girls. He went away, and the girls settled down on the sofa in the hall, and Ariana began to show and tell how she lived here, how well she was doing, and that soon she would be Nanny's wife and a full-fledged mistress of the house. "Yeah, I'm listening to you and remembering how you dreamed about it. I guess sometimes dreams come true." My friend shook her head. "Listen, could you make dinner?" Ariana asked her. Of course she could. Why would you ask that? She didn't understand. "You see, our housekeeper quit a few weeks ago, and now I have to do something in the kitchen. And you know I'm not good with my hands. I cook, of course, but I can see that nobody likes it. I have to make a mess of it, order something, buy something ready-made," the future owner of the house told her. "If there's groceries and everything, sure, I'll do it all," got up from the couch Sarah. "Now I'll show you everything." Ariana led her into the kitchen. showed her where everything was and then left her there alone. The girl spent about 2 hours in the kitchen. When almost everything was ready, she heard her son crying, ran to his room, changed his clothes, fed him and put him back on the bed. Sarah didn't hear it, but that's when Frank came home. "Lord, what is that smell in our house?" he asked from the threshold. "You know, a friend came to visit me, and I asked her to make us dinner." Ariana began to justify herself. She thought Sarah had done something wrong. "It's good we gather around the table, and she comes out," the man said. When the girl was called, she set the table and wanted to go to her room. "Sarah, why aren't you with us?" Frank turned to her. "Yeah, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed." It really was. She'd never sat at a table like that before, never eaten with people who had everything. "I don't know anything. Come sit down." The landlord pulled back a chair for her. She sat down modestly. Everyone began to eat and praise her food. Well, surprise, surprise, he sat there and munched on whatever the girl made tonight. "Frank, come on, it's all just regular food." She was embarrassed. "I understand you and Ariana are friends, but she doesn't like you very much," the father said, looking at his future daughter-in-law. "Frank, why would you say such a thing?" The girl almost jumped up from the table. "Calm down, sit back down," he told Ariana. "Dad, what are you starting?" Nanny put in his word. "Let me tell you, while I am still master of this house, and I want to offer Sarah a job, at least temporarily." He turned to her. What kind of job?" She didn't understand. She was uneducated. She didn't know anything. What could he offer her? "If you agree, you can stay in this house as Ariane's au pair," he told her. "You know, I have a small child and nowhere to put him." She looked at the door of the den where the child was now. "It's all right. I see you have a quiet one. You'll live like this for a while, and then we'll think of something," the man said good-naturedly. "Thank you. I will of course accept, because I have no money and nowhere to go." She turned to Ariana and thought it was a good thing she didn't have time to ask her for help. "That's settled. I feel like I'm about to have some delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners." Right, Ariana got up from the table and went to his office. "You're a real piece of work, friend. You haven't been in this house 24 hours, and you're already being welcomed here." Ariana walked past her and hissed those words. But Sarah didn't care about that. She went about her household chores as her master had asked her to, with only a few moments of distraction for her son. As Frank had said, Harvey was indeed a very quiet child. He slept most of the day. Sarah was only distracted by feeding him. She was really enjoying everything right now. In the morning, the driver would take her to get groceries. Sometimes, Harvey was in the carrier the landlord had kindly bought her, was by her side, but more often, she left him at home because the time she was in the store was enough while the boy slept. The girl bought both groceries for the house and for herself and the child. The salary was good. She had enough to buy clothes for the boy. The house was perfectly clean and the food was always deliciously cooked. "Dad, let's hire a normal housekeeper. We don't need this one. She has no education, no references, nothing," Nanny told his father. "What are you talking about? Sarah is great at everything. She can do it all. Even if they offered me someone else now, I wouldn't take it," the man said. "That's not how she makes salads for me," Ariana plugged in to her husband-to-be. "What's she doing wrong there?" Frank wondered. "The pieces are cut too big," Ariana told him. "You still came from the province yesterday, and you were best friends. It's still unknown what pieces you're cutting." Frowned the man's eyebrows. He headed for his office. He really liked it when he went in there. Everything was perfect, not a single speck of dust, smelled delicious. And on the desk, there was always a bunch of fresh flowers that spread the fragrance, and it was all done by a young girl. Even though she had a small child, she had time to do everything, both housework and cooking, and little things like putting flowers on the table. "Frank, may I?" There was a knock on the door, and Sarah's head appeared in the doorway. "Yeah, sure. Come on in." He never minded her visit. "You wouldn't think it. I just came by to find out," she started to say. "You don't have to make excuses. Ask for whatever you want," the man said calmly. He could see how shy she was in front of him, and maybe even a little afraid. No, you what? I'm fine with everything. I don't want to ask for anything," the girl said. "What then?" He waited. "I wanted to ask you. I know that you like coffee very much, and I could brew or make it every time you come, but I don't know how much sugar to put in a mug to make you feel comfortable," she asked him in all seriousness. "You're not kidding now," laughed Frank. He was fascinated by the girl's naivete, her dedication to her work, and everything else. "No," she looked at him, and didn't understand why he asked that question. "Well, I'll tell you. If you don't know how much sugar to put in your coffee, just put a couple of pieces on a plate, and if I need it, I'll add it myself," the man answered her with a smile on his face. Ouch! Sarah looked at him confused and berated herself for not realizing it herself. "Anything else?" He looked at her. "No, that's it, thank you." After that, she would go to her room. There was enough free time. She could walk with her son in the yard or in the garden. "Why are you chilling again?" She heard Ariana's voice. "Why would you do that?" Sarah turned to her. "How?" She didn't understand. "But you can say it humanly. You and I used to be friends. We were very close," the girl told her. "What happened before doesn't matter to me. Now I am your mistress and you must do my bidding, understand?" said Ariana arrogantly. "Understandable. But right now I have free time, and at this point I do what I want." Sarah turned away from her and walked further down the path. "Look, we've become greyhounds," the girl said in her back, but no one paid attention to her. She ran into the house and went straight to her fiancé. "Can you imagine? She's being rude to me now," she told him. "Look, you're the one who brought her into our house. You wanted to show her off, so here you go, reap the benefits," he told her. "Tired? Why do I have to put up with her in this house?" Ariana sat back in her chair and folded her arms across her chest as usual. She always did that when she was offended. "It's okay, wait, her father will see what she's really like anyway, and won't keep her for long," Nanny promised her. "Let's see." It didn't seem to me that he was on that girl's side in everything, the girl said angrily. During the day it was unbearable. When Sarah served lunch, Nanny and Ariana were always displeased with something. The bread wasn't cut the same way, or the potatoes in the soup weren't as cooked as they would have liked. There were complaints about everything, but Sarah already knew that and didn't pay any attention. If she didn't like something, she just put the plate away and put it in the sink. What did she care? Then they'd talk about her, get angry, until Frank said so. Sarah wouldn't listen to anyone. Frank came home earlier now than he had when he lived with Nanny. After he came in, it was always everyone gathered around the table, eating dinner, talking. And then he liked to come into Sarah's room, and while she did the dishes, he'd do Harvey's chores. Harvey was about 8 months old. The boy was trying to walk on his feet, and the man helped him with everything. "You're doing so well." Sarah watched with amusement as Frank worked on her baby. "Oh girl, you should know how much I want grandchildren. My nanny is a lazy bum. How old he is. It's high time he got married and had children, but he still does not dare to take this step," sighed the man and continued to stack cues with the boy. "Yeah," Sarah pressed her lips together. He was about to leave to get out of their way when he saw that there were abrasions and bruises on the girl's wrist and forearm. "What's that?" Frank asked Sarah. He knew for a fact that she didn't go anywhere but the store, the garden, and the yard. "Yeah, don't mind her. So somewhere, something hit, bumped, she said. "This can't be." He looked into her eyes. Sarah lowered hers. But it was true, she was no longer looking at her master. "Okay." He let go of her hands and went to his office. The man was so angry for some reason, he couldn't put into words what was happening to him. In his office, he dialed the phone number of his acquaintance. It took a long time, but the long-awaited hello came through the receiver. "John, hello," he greeted his interlocutor. "You know, I want you to come to my house when I tell you to and set up the cameras." "Outside," the young man clarified from him. "No, inside," the man told him calmly. "Okay, whatever you say. Just say free time and you already have me." John was no longer surprised by anything. "I'll see you then," pressed hang up on Frank's cell phone. He had a sneaking suspicion that maybe his son and future daughter-in-law were doing something wrong. But if he found out that Sarah was doing something wrong, he would have a conversation with her too. It was literally a week after that. The man had been thinking about what to do to keep Nanny and Ariana away. "Listen, young people," he once said at dinner. This afternoon, he had a brilliant idea. "Yes, Dad, go on." Nanny looked at him. He knew that when his father said that, it meant he had something to offer. "Would you like to go on vacation?" he asked them. "Why all of a sudden?" Ariana didn't understand. "You spend all your time at home. Aren't you tired of it? You go out at night and sleep during the day. But go away, get some air, see how others live, show yourselves." Of course, they agreed. This was the moment when the cameras could be set up unhindered. Dad took them on a 2-week trip. It wasn't until they left, Sarah was at the store at the time, that Frank texted John. He came and set everything up quickly. "Thank you," he shook the specialist's hand. "You're welcome, you're welcome." John's gone home. Sarah came back. She was surprised that the man was still home. "Why aren't you at work?" she asked him. "You know, I thought I'd give myself a day off today. I love spending time with your Harvey. I adore him so much. Will you let me walk him?" Frank asked her. "Of course, what are you asking?" She went to dress the baby. While the man was walking with him, the girl did a lot of chores around the house. She was flattered, of course, that the master himself was taking care of her child, but on the other hand, she did not want the boy to get used to him. In the meantime, Frank enjoyed playing with Harvey like a little boy. He had become so attached to the boy that he was willing to do anything for him. In the yard, a sandbox had been set up, swings had been made, and a small slide had been built. "Why are you doing all this?" Sarah asked him. Why? Look how much fun he's having." The man pointed at the boy, who was grinning from ear to ear. "Not today, tomorrow. Suddenly, we shall be away from you. And what will all this be for?" she speculated. "I hope to have grandchildren someday." He was sad. The man was especially sad when in the evenings, watching the cameras, he saw the girl practicing with her child. She doesn't just feed him in the evening and put him to bed. She sits with him for long periods of time, shows him letters, they learn colors, shapes, and everything else. It was so endearing. Frank was once again convinced that this was the perfect woman. She could do everything and have time for everything. After that, the work process began. As before, the man left home early in the morning and returned late in the evening. He saw that at this time Sarah does not work hard. She does not lie on the couch, does not watch TV. She still works around the house. Even though she doesn't have to cook dinner, she still finds some work to do. And the man liked that. Finally, Nanny and Ariana returned from their vacation. As soon as they entered the house, Ariana stopped on the doorstep. What's that smell in here?" she said out loud. "It's probably just me washing the windows, and the smell hasn't gotten out yet," Sarah told her. "Try to get it weathered quickly," the hostess said, and threw her bag on the floor, her boots off in different directions. Sarah put it all away and went to set the table for the young people to eat from the road. In the evening, when Frank got home, he, as was his habit immediately after dinner, went to look over what had happened on the cameras. It was really interesting to him, but he didn't even expect what he might see. There was a lunch break. Since he wasn't home, the table was set for only 2 people. "Sarah, where are you?" shouted Ariana. "Right away, I'll get everything," the girl replied. "Not now, but now," she told her. "But I don't have 10 arms, I can't go broke," the girl answered her calmly. "What?" Ariana picked up the plate and threw it on the floor. It shattered. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked her for the umpteenth time. "Why am I doing this?" The girl grabbed her hands. "What are you doing here? You're the one who's all set, aren't you?" "Let go," Sarah shouted, but she clenched her hands tighter and tighter. "Ariana, calm down." Nanny tried to stop her. "Are you going to tell me anything else here?" She turned to him. "It's all because of you, you bastard." She slapped her. Sarah clutched her face, staring at Ariana with big eyes. When Frank saw all this, he realized how the girl got the bruises. So it was the son and daughter-in-law who were always messing with her. He wanted to jump in and protect her right now, but he decided to wait and see what happened. He went out into the hallway, and there was no one there. Sarah was in the kitchen. Nanny was probably going out again. Frank couldn't stand this in his house. He was overcome with conflicting feelings. He looked into the room where the boy was playing in his crib. The man tried to be home as often as possible now. He even managed to get home for lunch. "I don't recognize you, father," the son said cheekily. "It's okay. It's always going to be like this now." The man couldn't contain himself. One evening he went down to the first floor, saw Sarah there, and the baby beside her. "What are you doing here so late?" he asked her. "Sorry, we're going to bed now," as if frightened by the girl. "It's okay. You can walk whenever and wherever you want," he reassured her. "It's okay." She smiled and went to her room. The man shrugged and went to his room. Lately he'd been wondering if he and Sarah had something in common. Now he almost never missed a video, which was very exciting for him. One day he came home later than usual. No one had seen him. Frank went into his office, and like all the other days he started watching a movie, as he called it to himself. "Harvey, run over here," came Sarah out of the room. The man looked at it, and again tenderness came into his heart. "Mama." The boy walked uncertainly towards her. The girl stretched out her arms and picked up the child. Then she went to the fireplace, where there were many pictures. She corrected some of them, and then pointed to Frank's dead wife. At that moment, the man wondered what she could possibly know about her. "Look, son, there's your grandmother, and that's your grandfather." Sarah pointed to his picture. "I don't understand anything," shook his head at the man in front of the monitor. "And here is your daddy Nanny, but he is bad, not like grandfather," the mother emotionally told her son. They stood there for a while, and then went about their business again. Frank smiled, thinking to himself that the girl had no one, so she imagined it was her family. He turned everything off and went to bed. But a few days later the same thing happened again. "Sarah, why don't you pack up Harvey and I'll take him for a ride, and you do something?" A man came out to her one day. Okay, it was a routine request. They've done this many times before. But this time, Frank wasn't taking Harvey to the toy store or anything. They were going to the clinic. It may have been crazy, but the man was determined to check it out thoroughly no matter what. He had his son's hair in his pocket, and the boy would be collected at the clinic. "Hello." He came in, gave his last name, said he had an appointment, and was signed in. Yes, of course, the girl escorted him to his office. At this point, Harvey became cranky, but they gave him a drink of water and a toy, and he quickly calmed down. When all the procedures were over, all that was left was to wait. Now Frank always brought Harvey a trinket, a gift or something when he drove home from work. "Why are you spoiling him?" Sarah asked him. "Look at him. He's so cute and nice, and he's so smart." He kept watching the video. While he was at home, nothing like that happened. One day he was out again. In the evening, when he was watching the recorded video, he saw the unpleasant scene again. "Where are you going again?" Ariana almost stomped her feet. She was addressing her friend. "You're not going to control me all the time. I don't work for you. I work for Frank, she replied calmly. What can this old man do? He is already 1 foot in the grave. Soon I will marry Nani and become the mistress of this place, and you will not dare to say a word to me, said the evil one, whom he considered his future daughter-in-law. If you stay here as mistress, I won't stay here for a minute, Sarah answered her just as calmly. Yes, soon would be already, bored everyone, walking around here, eyes bothering, sushu-mushu with you all, resented the girl. Ariana, please leave me alone. I'm doing my job, and I think I'm doing it well. Frank is glad. I have nothing to be ashamed of. She turned around and wanted to leave the house. Where to? Ariana grabbed her arm. Let go. Turned, and the housekeeper looked at her. And I won't let go. When I want to do it, then I'll do it. It was like Ariana thought she was the queen here, which she really wasn't. Don't touch me, please. Sarah tried to get away from her, but at that moment Ariana pushed her so hard that she fell and hit her head on the corner of the table. At that moment, the master of the house became very frightened. He came out of his study and went straight to Sarah's room, but she was not there, and neither was the child. What anger he felt at that moment. With 2 jumps he overcame the stairs, despite his age, and entered his son's room. Where is she? He asked them. What? Nani turned to him. Where's Sarah? He repeated his question. How should I know where your Sarah is? He shrugged. Ariana sat quietly by the mirror. She didn't even turn around. If you don't tell me where the girl is now, I'll find her anyway. But it won't make you feel any better, he said. She was scrubbing the floors downstairs today. I don't know how it happened, but when I came downstairs, she was already unconscious on the floor. I called an ambulance. They took her away, the girl said fearfully. What are you doing? Frank told them angrily, slammed the door and went downstairs. He got in his car and raced to the nearest drugstore, but the girl wasn't there. Then he started to find out where she might have been taken. An hour later, the man was already sitting by her bed. It so happened that the child had no one to leave him with, so he was brought with his mother. Thank you, she looked at him. No, thank you. He turned around and walked out. Frank felt bad about the whole situation. He didn't realize how his son was living and what he was doing. The next morning, he called a lawyer to help him solve some cases. Frank was afraid to leave Sarah at home with these 2 inadequate people. After being at work for a few hours, he came straight home. The girl was cooking. His son and his fiancée were not around. The man exhaled calmly. He gathered his grandson and went out for a walk with him. Glad, huh? Sarah heard Ariana's snake-like hiss from above. No, she shook her head. You got yourself a grandfather, Ariana sneered. I didn't hammer anyone. As always, she was calm. When dinner was ready and the family was gathered around the table, Frank got up, went to Sarah's room, and carried his grandson in his arms. He had bought a new high chair for him today and placed it at the head of the table where he had always sat before. What kind of news is that? Nani wondered. The master has taken his seat, and you, Sarah, finish up and sit down with us. I have an announcement to make, the man muttered. Maybe not, she didn't want to sit here with them. Please, he remembered, as Ariana made that one sit up. Good, she finished setting the table and took a seat next to the man. So, kids, Frank looked at everyone around the table. It was no secret that Nani was my only son and heir, and everything I have would go to him. Okay, Nani realized this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Shut up, his father told him sternly. What? He tried to get up from the table. If you leave now, you won't hear the most important thing, Frank said more calmly. So, what's next? The guy was ready to listen. Now, I hope you realize that I put Harvey in that seat for a reason. The will has been rewritten, and the house and everything that goes with it belongs to him from now on. Of course, until he comes of age, it can be managed by Sarah. He looked at her. Why? Her eyes got really big. Daddy, what about me? Nanny couldn't understand. And I bought you an apartment in a residential area and assigned a monthly allowance, but only for a year, he said calmly, and began to eat. How dare you do this to your son? Ariana jumped to her feet. What? You're not going to be the mistress of this place anymore. The man grinned. It was all you. She leaned over Sarah. And you better not touch her, or you won't be here a minute longer, Frank threatened her. Yes, she is, gasped Ariana with anger. Goodbye. The man waved his hand at her. Nanny got up from the table. He went to his room to pack his things. Why are you doing this to them? Sarah asked. I've seen all the ways they've treated you, Frank admitted to her. Seen how? She couldn't understand. As he noticed the bruises, he set up the cameras, and when he heard what you tell your son, he decided to get an examination. The man confessed, and everything else. Wow, and we live and know nothing, she laughed. Do you think I'm an old geezer with one foot in the grave, too? He took her hands in his. Of course not, she blushed. I wouldn't mind having a mistress like that in the house, he winked at the girl. Frank, she didn't know what to say to him. Hopefully you'll soon get used to just Frank. The man stood up and took the boy in his arms. I'm at a loss, Sarah admitted to him. It's okay. I'm not suggesting you socialize as master and housekeeper, but as man and woman. If it doesn't work out, I'll raise Harvey like a grandson, otherwise like a son, he tossed to the boy, and he squealed with delight. When he said that, a couple was coming down the hall. When Ariana heard those words, she thought she was going to faint. Come on, why are you up? Nanny said to her. Back off, she looked at him with disdain. Yeah, I picked the wrong guy to woo, she said aloud. Are you still here? The owner of the house turned to her. Don't worry, we'll leave now, and I wish you all the wrong things, she hissed, glaring at Sarah. And happiness to you, the girl muttered to her and smiled. When the couple left the house, the father heard an argument going on in the yard. He went outside. What's going on? He looked at the driver and his son. The guard won't give me a car, Nanny almost cried. And he doesn't have to, Frank said calmly. What about me? Nanny waved his hands. Just like everyone else, you earn money, learn to respect people, then maybe you'll get something. The man came back inside. And what? Are you going to order me to take public transportation? Ariana snorted. I don't want to have to walk. I only have 100 rubles. He pulled a bill out of his pocket. And how could I get in touch with you? She almost cried. Frank walked over to Sarah. She didn't recoil or move away. So, are you going to give me a chance? The man asked her. Just not all at once, she laughed. Of course, I'm inviting you to the restaurant tonight. He kissed her hand. Okay, I agree. I hope you don't mind the gray color. She was referring to her dress. But promise me you'll let me buy something for you later. He smiled and looked at her. Frank went to his office, Sarah to her room, each thinking about the evening ahead and the fact that maybe the story with Ariana might not be over yet, and she would still show up in their lives.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.